The world was jolted into a new and dangerous reality. On the 28th of February, 2026, when the United States and Israel launched a coordinated military assault on Iran, triggering one of the most volatile global security crises in modern history. Explosions echoed across Tehran and multiple Iranian cities as missiles and airstrikes targeted key military and strategic locations. Within hours, the conflict expanded beyond Iran's borders when Bahrain confirmed that the headquarters of the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet had been targeted by a missile strike, sending shockwaves through military commands and political leadership worldwide. The sudden escalation pushed the Middle East to the brink of a broader war, forcing governments, markets, and civilians into a state of high alert. From the very first moments of the operation, the scale of the confrontation was unmistakable. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that American forces had entered what he described as major combat operations against Iran, working alongside Israel to dismantle missile systems, military infrastructure, and strategic capabilities that Washington and Tel Aviv had long described as growing threats. The announcement confirmed that this was not a limited strike or symbolic action. It was a full-scale military campaign with potentially global consequences. The initial strikes began with powerful explosions in Tehran, including areas near central government and military facilities. Israeli and U.S. forces coordinated the operation after months of rising tensions and failed negotiations over Iran's nuclear and missile programs. According to officials, the goal was to neutralize what they called an imminent threat posed by Iran's military capabilities and to prevent further escalation in the region. The offensive, planned weeks in advance, involved advanced aircraft, missiles, and naval forces positioned across the Middle East. Before we go deeper into how this conflict unfolded, what triggered this massive joint operation, and why the world is now watching every move with anxiety, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These global conflicts are changing the balance of power in real time, and staying informed has never been more important as this situation continues to escalate hour by hour. As the first waves of strikes hit Iranian territory, airspace across multiple countries began shutting down. Sirens sounded in Israel and neighboring regions as authorities warned citizens to prepare for retaliation. Israeli officials declared a nationwide state of emergency and urged civilians to remain near shelters, anticipating incoming missiles or drone attacks. The rapid shift from targeted strikes to full defensive posture signaled just how quickly the situation could spiral into a wider war. Iran's response came swiftly and with unmistakable intensity. Officials in Tehran vowed what they described as a crushing retaliation, warning that U.S. and Israeli military assets across the region would be treated as legitimate targets. The message was clear. Any attack on Iranian territory would trigger a response extending far beyond its borders. Within hours, that warning appeared to materialize. Bahrain reported that the headquarters of the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet, a crucial hub for American naval operations in the Gulf, had been targeted by a missile strike. Emergency sirens sounded across the island kingdom as defense systems activated. The targeting of such a high-profile military installation signaled a dangerous expansion of the conflict, raising fears that U.S. bases across the Middle East could become immediate targets. Military analysts quickly noted the significance of the Fifth Fleet headquarters. Located in Bahrain, it serves as the command center for U.S. naval operations across the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, and Arabian Sea. Any attack on this installation represents not only a tactical escalation, but also a symbolic challenge to American military presence in the region. The reported missile targeting sent shockwaves through defense circles and prompted immediate reassessment of force protection measures across multiple countries. Meanwhile, reports emerged that Iranian missiles and drones had also been launched toward Israeli territory in retaliation for the initial strikes. Hospitals in Israel activated emergency protocols, and civil defense systems were placed on maximum alert as explosions and interception attempts were reported in northern regions. The exchange of fire between the two sides marked a dangerous cycle of escalation with no immediate signs of de-escalation. The joint U.S.-Israel operation itself had been months in the making. Military assets, including aircraft carriers, fighter jets, and refueling aircraft, had been deployed to the region in anticipation of potential conflict. Intelligence reports suggested that planning intensified after nuclear negotiations between Washington and Tehran collapsed, leaving diplomatic channels strained and trust severely eroded. With negotiations failing to produce a breakthrough, military options moved to the forefront. President Trump framed the operation as a necessary step to eliminate what he called imminent threats and to prevent Iran from advancing its nuclear and missile capabilities. Israeli leaders echoed that position, describing the strikes as preemptive actions aimed at removing an existential danger. The coordinated messaging underscored the depth of alignment between Washington and Tel Aviv in confronting Iran's strategic ambitions. However, the broader international reaction was one of alarm. Governments across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East began issuing emergency advisories and calling for restraint. Airspace closures rippled across the region as airlines rerouted flights to avoid potential conflict zones. Oil markets reacted immediately, with prices showing signs of volatility as traders anticipated possible disruptions to supply routes through the Gulf. For civilians across the Middle East, the sudden escalation created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. Residents in multiple countries reported hearing explosions or air defense sirens as governments prepared for potential spillover. The memory of previous regional conflicts added to the anxiety, with many fearing that the current confrontation could evolve into a prolonged and devastating war. Military experts began analyzing possible next steps. If Iran continued targeting U.S. bases or allied infrastructure, Washington could respond with further strikes, potentially broadening the scope of operation. Conversely, if diplomatic channels reopened, there might still be a chance to prevent full-scale regional conflict. But in the immediate aftermath of the February 28 strikes, the trajectory appeared dangerously upward. The targeting of the Fifth Fleet headquarters also raised concerns about maritime security. The Persian Gulf and surrounding waters are among the most strategically important shipping routes in the world. Any sustained military confrontation in the area could threaten commercial shipping, energy exports, and global trade flows. Insurance costs for vessels operating in the region began rising almost instantly as risk assessments shifted. Inside the United States, political and military leadership faced urgent decisions. Protecting American personnel stationed across the Middle East became a top priority. Additional defensive measures were reportedly considered for bases in Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and other locations, potentially within range of Iranian missiles or drones. The Pentagon moved into high alert posture as contingency plans were reviewed. Israel, meanwhile, prepared for continued exchanges. Air defense systems remained active, and reserve forces were mobilized in anticipation of further attacks. The possibility of prolonged confrontation with Iran, potentially involving proxy groups and regional allies, loomed large. Analysts warned that the conflict could extend beyond direct state-to-state exchanges, drawing in multiple actors across the region. Global markets reacted with volatility as investors grappled with uncertainty. Energy prices, defense stocks, and safe haven assets such as gold showed rapid movement. Financial analysts cautioned that prolonged conflict could disrupt supply chains and economic stability, particularly if key shipping routes or energy infrastructure were affected. The interconnected nature of the global economy meant that events unfolding in the Middle East could have far-reaching consequences. Diplomatic efforts intensified behind the scenes even as military operations continued. International organizations and world leaders called for immediate de-escalation and renewed dialogue. The challenge lay in finding a pathway back to negotiation after such a dramatic escalation. Trust between the parties had been severely damaged, and public rhetoric on all sides remained highly charged. For now, the world watches as events continue to unfold. the joint U.S.-Israel attack on Iran, and the reported targeting of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain mark a turning point in regional and global security. What began as a coordinated military operation has rapidly evolved into a broader confrontation with unpredictable consequences. Each hour brings new developments, new risks, and new questions about what comes next. As tensions remain high and the possibility of further escalation looms, one reality is clear. The 28th of February, 2026, will be remembered as a day when the balance of power in the Middle East shifted dramatically and when the world was forced to confront the possibility of a conflict that could reshape the geopolitical landscape for years to come.